Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing lesson 3.6, comparing fractions. So let's look at the how we can compare fractions and do some practice. So sometimes we're going to have fractions like the one you see here where I have my denominator is the same in both of these fractions. I have 4/10 and I have 2/10. And when we have the same denominator, it's really easy to determine which fraction is larger than the other because, of course, the larger numerator is going to be the larger fraction. So in this case, 4/10 is greater than 2/10 because I get 4 parts out of 10 versus getting 2 parts. I would get more. But when we look at the bottom here, we have different denominators but the same numerator. So in both of these fractions, I'm going to get 4 parts, but look at your denominators. There are 12 parts in this one, so I'm only going to get 4 out of 12, and in this one, I'm going to get 4 out of 10. So most likely, my pieces are going to be bigger in this 4/10. So with this particular comparison, 4/12 is less than 4/10. So what happens when I have two fractions that do not have the same numerator nor do they have the same denominator? I have to figure out a way to compare these fractions. So one way is to create a common denominator. And so when we look at the 5 and the 10, I think I'm going to make my denominator 10 because I know that 10 is a multiple of 5 and 10 is a multiple of 10. So if I change my denominator to 10 and I make a new and improved fraction, what did I do to my 5 to make it become 10? I multiplied times 2. So that means if I multiply my bottom times 2, I need to take my top times 2. So now my new fraction becomes 4/10. So 2/5 is equivalent or equal to 4/10. If we look at our second fraction, how did I make 10 10? I didn't really do anything. I would have multiplied that times 1, right? So my 6 would have been times 1. So this fraction doesn't really change because I already have the denominator that I need. So now I'm looking at comparing two fractions that have the same denominator, 4/10 versus 6/10. And 6/10 is definitely larger. So I'm going to state that 4/10 is less than 6/10. So this is another way to compare fractions where we can change the denominator and make them have common denominators. Another way to compare fractions is to use what we call the benchmark. And if you'll remember in earlier lessons, we compared fractions using our fraction circles and we compared them to 1/2. And so if you remember, if we take the same fraction that we just had, 2/5, and you remember when you did your fraction circles, 2/5 was actually less than 1/2. So 1/2 is going to be our benchmark. And then 6/10 would have been somewhere over here on a number line. So if we were using 1/2 as a benchmark, then we would know that 2/5 is less than 6/10 because we know 6/10 is larger than 1/2. So that's just another method that we can use. So we've talked about several different methods: benchmark, common denominators. Sometimes we can look at common numerators. We could pull out our fraction circles again. We could use a number line, but these are some just different ways that we can compare fractions. So in class, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be comparing two fractions with different numerators. We're going to be comparing two fractions with different denominators. And we're going to be using benchmark fractions such as 1/2 to help us compare fractions. Can't wait to see you.